very much. That clock is a little slow. However, we're right on time. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight, not only here, but live streaming. This is a regular meeting of Council for April 23rd. And before we start, as we always do, I acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. They're traditional lands, and those Lekwungen-speaking people are today represented by, or known as, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and their historic connections continue to this day. Also, as I alluded to, there is live streaming, and the backs of your heads will be recorded and put in our archives. The proceedings will, not just the backs of your heads. We have an amended agenda before us, and we're now in the open portion at 7 o'clock. So we start with the minutes and reports of the committee. We have, first of all, the Budget Committee, which was held on the 4th, 5th, and 12th of April. So we're going to have a motion to adopt those minutes, please.
Move adoption.
Seconded.
Moved. Questions, comments? Okay, go ahead, please, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. I actually see in front of us that there is a copy of one of the questions that I had, so thank you for that. The other question I had was, in some of these items that have appeared in the minutes, it looks like we had a motion because it says carried, when in actual fact on a couple of them it was a very split vote. And so I'm wondering if there's some way to actually show that in the future, or going back and showing that in some of these things, because to me, when something was voted on and it was 4-3, just to have it say carried doesn't really give.
Staff, could you address that as an issue?
Your Worship, that's certainly something we could do if council, if the preference was to record every time someone voted against something. And normally it's just a carried, and unless someone would ask that their vote be recorded. But if it were the preference of council, we could record all negative votes.
I think that it's just in the future, perhaps it might be something we would consider. I just didn't realize that it was only going to say, you know, that 4 of us voted for something and 3 voted against or something like that. So thank you.
Just maybe we're actually in the process of reviewing our procedure bylaw and intend to bring that forward probably after the election, to be honest. So we've actually done the work, and that would be something we'll bring forward to you as an option.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or other comments on that? So this is a motion to adopt the minutes of the Budget and Estimates Committees, 3 of them, sorry. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. We have the minutes of Council next, and that's from April the 9th for adoption, please.
Move adoption.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion, comments? Seeing none, call a question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Next, the Committee of the Whole, April 16th.
Move the Committee of the Whole and Special Council meeting.
Together? Thank you.
Yes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. I start my remarks by noting our 2 councillors are away. I think Councillor Zelka is on a chaperoning some school trip somewhere, and Councillor Ney is away. I have a number of remarks to make tonight, and I start with the police board. There's some of you may know there's a new person been appointed to replace Sandra Waddington, and Wendy Zink is the person who's been appointed. She's a provincial appointee to that board, and she starts, actually, she's going to be sworn in tomorrow at our April 24th regular monthly meeting of the police board. So we will welcome her. We we received a note from the Cultural Heritage International Relations Office in Quebec City from regarding our membership in the Francophonie, and a lovely certificate from the Réseau des villes francophones et francophiles d'Amérique, and it's a certificate, it's a membership certificate, which says it's the motion to promote the cultural economy and tourist industry of francophone and francophile communities. And to put it in a slightly different way, it's to promouvoir la culture, l'économie, l'industrie touristique des communautés francophones et francophiles d'Amérique. C'est correct?
C'est correct,
So
mais
we will,
réseau, c'est
we will have
un
that-
réseau, mais
Oh, merci beaucoup. So we will have that displayed somewhere in, as we know, there's a significant number of bilingual people in Oak Bay, and particularly bilingual kids, because we have the immersion programs at a number of schools here. We also, thirdly, I guess, we received a correspondence from the Capital Regional District, which has been circulated, advising us that the Capital Regional District Regional Growth Strategy has been formally passed. And you may recall that there was mediation that was involved, and it was quite some time before it could get settled, but it has now been settled, and that's now allowing the communities on the west side of our CRD to move forward with some of their official community plans. There's a couple of thanks to mention. First is the 19th annual Oak Bay Oak Bay Artists Studio Spring Tour, a great success, and I went to a number of the studios and was told there was a large turnout. We had 4 artists set up at the Neighborhood Learning Center, and I think on the one day they had about 180 people come through, so the artists who set up for them were very pleased, and we're grateful for the tour. We had a nice letter from a grade 12 student and Reynolds who spent a 4-day work experience with our fire department. And hopefully that might turn into a career for her. And she wrote a very nice letter to the chief. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. The 4 days last week were one of the best experiences of my life. And I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to experience a week in the life of your crew. So that was from Jessica. And just this afternoon, we got another letter of appreciation, which I thought I should bring to everyone's attention. And that was from a person on Woodburn who held our staff, particularly Renee Bousser, in high esteem for his and he's a member of the Department for Planning and Building. He's a building inspector, and he was described as professional, thoughtful, and helpful. And we're very fortunate to have him on our staff, and I'm sure Ms. Jensen, who's the acting director of that area, would agree. And the writer goes on to say, my thoughts are by working with the Planning and Building Department, one will receive a positive building experience. So thanks, and pass our thanks to Renee, please. Move on to AVICC. That's the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities. That was held about 2 weeks ago, and was it? Oh no, last weekend. Last weekend. How quick things move forward. I first want to start by congratulating Councillor Braithwaite. She was elected to the executive of AVICC. During there's 2 things I wanted to point out. There's a lot of work been done with resolutions, 2 of which I had mentioned I would bring forward under new business some time ago, and because of the particular meeting, I decided not to. But one of them came up at the Mayor's Caucus, and that's legalization of cannabis. Fully 7 communities on the island are moving to to prohibit the sales except in select areas, and I know staff will be coming forward with some recommendations for Oak Bay, but it seems to be a concern right across the island. And of those 7 communities, some have already passed legislation to prohibit it, and others are in the process thereof. The other item that I had considered to bring up under new business and will not as a result of what happened at our annual Mayors and Councillors Conference is the speculation tax. There was a major resolution that was brought forward, but it wasn't dealt with, but it was referred to the executive in June, and we hope that Councillor Braithwaite will bring us back the results of that, because at that meeting there was a lot of people who were lined up on both sides of that very complex issue. Some wanted the communities to have their say as to whether or not they should have a speculation tax in their community or not. Others were in favor of the way it sits now. So we will wait till June and get a report back, if you please, Councillor Braithwaite, and then we can see whether or not we want to discuss it at Council once we've heard what our executive of our association has decided. Okay. So, and now, on a bit of a sad note, and I want to just this last remarks and comment on the recent deaths that we know in our community. One from mental illness. Those of us who went to the service heard about that, and of course one from addiction, and which both deeply saddened our community. And our condolences go out to the families of the retired firefighter and the young Oak Bay High School student who we recently learned over the weekend had died. But these tragedies, they highlight the need for our community to respond and respond in unison. And in my view, we should come together, we must come together to do what we can to relieve the pain and suffering of those living with mental health issues and addictions. So what I thought was we should create opportunities for dialogue within our community, and to do our part to reduce, in those dialogues, to reduce the stigma surrounding both mental illness and the addictions. And to that end, I've asked our liaison to the school board, the schools, local schools, Councillor Kirby, to look for ways that we can hold community dialogues. And these dialogues would be aimed in part to raise the curtain of secrecy that all too often hide these issues from view. Councillor Kirby is already organizing a team for our municipality in an event called the Ride Don't Hide, and that's the Canadian Mental Health Association, again, trying to raise awareness of the issue. And that's in June, but I've asked her to take the issue further and take a broader perspective and reach out to our community, to community groups, to community associations, so we can come together in a conversation as a community, so we can talk and not hide about these things. And it really is important. We've seen that in the fire department and, of course, in the high school recently, very tragic, that deeply struck us all. So I thank Councillor Kirby for taking this on, and it is an important issue. So thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Now, we have the public participation period. This is an opportunity for members of the public in attendance to address council on matters that directly affect our community. And so is there anyone who wants to come to the podium? Okay, good, because now I'm going to give you the rules. Sometimes there's no one coming forward. So we'd ask you to state your name and your municipality and the topic of your remarks, and also print your name and the municipality on, there's a sheet on the podium there, please. Keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less, and address all comments to me. Now, I should note that if it's to do with the financial 5-year plan that we have, you will have an opportunity to talk about taxes later if you want. So that'll be a more open one directly on the topic of taxes and the like. So You are being recorded, as I mentioned before, and we allow 20 minutes in total time for this period on our agenda. So, come forward, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship. Scott Piercy, Municipality of Oak Bay.
Welcome. And
And
when I say
councillors.
welcome, I will start the 3 minutes for those. I'll repeat it. I won't start it because you're not up to the
speed.
microphone yet. There you go.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Piercy.
Yeah, I'd like to address the provincial government's most recent February budget proposal and its potential effect on our municipality and home values. I moved back to Victoria in 1999 after 5 years away, and I've lived here as a child and attended Monterey Elementary School. My wife Sandy and I brought back our savings and chose Oak Bay when we moved back because of its location, charms, schools, and the security of as an investment for our home and equity. Oak Bay is a comparable blue chip stock. Oak Bay is to Victoria as British Columbia is to Canada. We studied the home values and knew from growing up in Victoria that this is where we want to raise our kids. On February 21st, 2018, in an article in the Vancouver Sun, Carol James is quoted as saying the following, and I'll pull up the article here. Finance Minister Carol James says the goal of her budget's new housing taxes is a downturn in the market and a drop in home prices, potentially making the market more affordable, but also potentially putting some existing homeowners underwater on their mortgages. James said Wednesday that her new taxes on speculators, foreign buyers, and homes valued at more than $3 million, she hopes lead to a correction in the housing market. Oh, sorry, I'll get back to my notes here. In order to achieve the devaluation of homes, the government plans to use a wealth tax, referred to as a speculation tax. Speculation tax is not the right way to express this new taxation because taxing on winning or losing does not make sense. No speculator will invest in something they know they would lose. My wife and I have invested in this community. We are shareholders, and our taxes go towards running the corporation of the District of Oak Bay. June is not soon enough to make a stand against this planned tax policy. I am asking you, Your Worship, and the councillors to stand up for me and my family and every other homeowner in this municipality and tell this provincial government that you do not want to see them erode the home equity of the homeowners in your municipality by using this prescribed wealth tax system. If they succeed in devaluation in the municipality, you will see a reduced budget, but we know that won't happen, and we know mill rates will be increased to maintain current available spending. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Piercy, and certainly it is open to any councillor to bring forward a motion along the lines you talked about, but at this point, as I'd mentioned, the association, and we're happy to have a representative on the executive now, is looking after that, and they may well come out with a strong statement one way or the other, and then certainly we can do something along those lines. From the mayors that I've spoken to, who have spoken directly with Selena Robinson, the Minister of Local Governments, and some have spoken to the Minister of Finance, right now this provincial government is not changing its mind at this point. So I think if we have the weight of our association to bring forward some constructive suggestions on the speculation tax, that would be helpful. So thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else wish to address us on a non-tax matter? Because you'll have that opportunity later.
I like the green ink. Jake Richardson, Oak Bay. Mayor and Council, I just have a couple of housekeeping.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Sorry.
Jake Richardson.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
I know it well, so. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. Could you please update us on the Mayor's Task Force for Community Engagement? There was a flurry of discussion on legalization of sweets at Council, in the papers and on the radio. And subsequently, Mary Douglas offered to convene an open house on the subject by the end of this month. That would seem to be an ideal opportunity to kick off community engagement, but the lines have since gone silent. While I allowed at some level the 6% plus increase in the budget, it seems an opportunity to also reconsider and set policy and fees with regard to DCC's parkland acquisition community amenities, etc. Esther Patterson has illustrated how follow-through can have immediate results by capturing $181,900. This is not a small amount. We're leaving a lot of money on the table by not addressing these issues. If you don't have real numbers yet, a caveat could be added to the permit applications indicating details to follow or some such, okay, and attaching that caveat immediately. It would be imprudent to continue to squander these opportunities, especially considering the still robust market, almost. Finally, just a little bit of trivia for your general information. The province of BC does not recognise Canadian passports as primary or secondary identification. You might hear more on this later as Homeland Security has been notified, all of which illustrates that government transparency is essential. I think in the interest of transparency that the community should be advised of any contentious issues Council chooses to leave in abeyance until after the election. I hope you'll all be able to attend the Oak Bay United Church Open House, at least one of their sessions, which are on this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richardson. I think staff can confirm that on the issue of DCCs and amenities, we hope to have that forward. That's something that staff were given directions to bring forward to some time ago, and I believe there's a report coming forward. I take it with the recommendations in mid-May at the Committee of the Whole. Is that, or which meeting will you bring it?
Your Worship, our plan is to bring that forward in June.
And sorry, again, say again?
In June.
June. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. End of that period. Do you have a question? Oh.
I was going to say if there's a need for an update on the public engagement.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
I can provide that.
Okay, yes. The chair is away, Ms. Richardson, who otherwise I would call upon Councillor Ney to give us a little bit of an update, but if you can give a high-level synopsis.
Well, I can just say that it starts on Saturday. That we'll begin pop-up sessions. So pop-up sessions where we start at Henderson on Saturday between 11 and 1, and there will be boards there, and we'll have iPads available to do a short, very brief questionnaire to find out what people are looking for information from the district, what they know and understand, what they don't know and understand, what their where there are gaps in information, and what they'd like to hear more of. So that begins on Saturday. We'll also, and then we'll continue throughout the following weeks. I think three weeks. We'll have several pop-up sessions. So watch for several of our committee members, Esther Patterson being one, Eric Zelka, Councillor Ney, and Andrew Appleton, and Naomi Pope, and they will all be available to do these questionnaires with the public. We're going to try to hit up softball, baseball, the volunteers in the Camas on Sunday at Uplands Park, and the Oak Bay Food Festival are several of the events where we'll be at. So watch for us at all those public venues, and that's that.
Thank you very much for that update. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is a presentation of the 2017 draft financial statements and audit findings. And here from our auditors, KPMG is not Randy Decksheimer, who is finally retired. I ran into him recently. He seemed about as relaxed and happy as I'd ever seen him. But we're joined tonight by Ms. Bates-Emer, who's a CPA and a CA and a partner with KPMG. There's no L in there. Sorry about that. So you have the floor. Will you be giving a PowerPoint or just speaking to us?
I'll just speak to our findings.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. You might want to raise that slightly because if you're not close to the microphone, then the people who are live streaming can't hear you. So if you wouldn't mind standing close to it also, and then make sure everyone who's watching at the confines of their home can hear you. So welcome.
Okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to highlight some of our findings. Thank you for introducing me. Yes, Randy has retired, and I've taken over several of his clients, Oak Bay being one of them. So in terms of the status of our audit, we have completed our procedures. We are comfortable with the financial statements as they are drafted. We plan to be in a position to issue our clean audit opinion once the financial statements are approved by council tonight. In terms of our materiality that was used in our procedures over the financial statements, we used a materiality of 800,000, which is consistent with what we've used in the past. That's driven off of your total expenses for the district. We found a couple of adjustments that were corrected related to the gas tax funding that you received and a system correction related to amortization. There were a couple of items that were left uncorrected, but they were amounts that were related to prior year that were corrected in the current year. So the ending surplus is correct, although revenue or expense was booked in the current year that related to last year. Usually you wouldn't restate your financial statements for non-material corrections like that. In terms of accounting estimates, so we're comfortable with the accounting estimates that have been used in the drafting of the financial statements related to the useful life of capital assets, employee future benefit liabilities, and any kind of contingent liabilities for the district. We did not identify any significant deficiencies in internal controls through the course of our procedures. We made some minor recommendations around updates to some of the district's policies, which is in our report. Significant accounting policies are consistent with those used in the prior years. Next year, there are a couple new accounting standards that will be applicable. We don't anticipate any significant changes in your presentation of your financial statements or the disclosures related to the new accounting standards that will be in your statements next year. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that just to say thank you to staff for their help in our performing our audit. They're very cooperative and gave us all the information we needed. So it's a clean, efficient process with staff.
Thank you very much. I know, I think I ran into a small team of auditors from time to time in our boardroom, and they seem hard at work, and they expressed very similar comments that the staff was really being helpful. So we thank our staff, and we also thank your group. Now, this is something I used to say to Mr. Decksheimer. Accountants do speak a slightly different language than others. So can you maybe just explain, because materiality is it's not something that we use in a day-to-day fashion. What does actually that mean?
Okay, so the materiality that we use in our procedures is a number that we determine at the planning stage that is sort of the upper threshold of a misstatement that we could accept in the financial statements and still issue a clean opinion. So the auditing standards suggest that in a not-for-profit environment where you're not driving your materiality off of profit, you would use a gross benchmark, so total revenues, total expenses, and that you could use a range of that gross benchmark from 0.5 to 3%. So we're just over 2% of total expenses is the 800,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I have a better understanding as a result of that. Thank you. The other thing was, and it didn't have to do with money and accounting principles as such, but there was a reference made to whistleblowing policies. Can you elaborate that and what your recommendation is in that regard?
Yes, so through the course of our work, we do sort of identify the policies that you have in place for general internal controls, as well as things like how you choose to capitalize your assets and whatnot. One of the things we typically look for in this type of environment would be a whistleblower policy. So a policy that outlines if there are any issues that are brought up by staff, who they would be escalated to. The policy would specify sort of that hierarchy, likely ending in reporting directly to yourself or council. It just gives staff a sort of confidential way to report issues without sort of fear of reprisal.
Okay. And is that something, KPMG probably does a lot of local governments. Is some things that are now in place or being put in place in local governments?
Yep. Several of them have policies in place for reporting those types of things. Others are working towards it, or some have some form of reporting protocol or policy.
And maybe I can just redirect that to staff a little bit. Is that something that we'll see being brought forward, Ms. Carter, if you can answer that?
Yes, Your Worship. We look at the audit findings each year and try to bring that forward throughout the year prior to the next audit.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let's see if there's any other questions. Ms. Bates-Emer, thank you. Questions? Councillor Braithwaite first, please.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I noticed around the materiality slide as well that there's the audit misstatement posting threshold, and it's $40,000. And I'm wondering how that compares to other municipalities. Is that about the same as other municipalities, or are we higher, lower?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the materiality is driven off of the gross, and most of our municipalities were doing it off of total expenses. So depending on the magnitude of your expenses, that posting threshold is usually always 5% of the materiality number that we choose.
Perfect,
So,
thank you.
Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. I noticed on page 8, there's, with respect to employee future benefit obligations, something I didn't understand there. We assessed the reasonableness of the discount rates and assumptions used by Mercer. Who's Mercer?
so you want me to take this? So Mercer is the actuary that you send your employee data to, and they come up with an estimate of the employee benefit liability at December 31st. They're a reputed actuary, and several other municipalities use the same.
No, thank you for that. It just was, a word in there that I'm sure a lot of people in the public wouldn't know who Mercer was. So that's why I asked. I thought it was something like that. And I also like your recommendation regarding information technology policies be reviewed and updated, and I believe we're doing that through you, Mayor, to staff.
That's correct, through Your Worship. We are looking at some policies and trying to bring a few forward every so often, and that is one of them that needs to be updated as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Croft, you finished with that one?
I am, thank you.
Councillor Murdoch, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just, I guess my question was go back into materiality. This is apparently the hot topic of the day. Why is that set at the sort of total gross number, like a $40-odd million number that we collect, but a lot of it is passed through, as opposed to based on the numbers that we actually control, like there's about a $23 million budget of money that we spend. Is that common that we use that number, sort of all the money that flows through us, even if it's just school district costs and so forth, are all included within that number, and that's where you set the threshold?
So that number is the $35 million that's in your total revenues on your statement of operations,
Okay.
which I think is a net tax number, right? Yeah. So really, we're looking at what's reported on these financial statements on a gross revenue basis, and the number that is on there is a net number for tax.
Okay. Thank you. And that's the common practice on all of these materiality setting?
Yes, usually because we are really giving an opinion on your financial statements as they're presented. So we're looking at what's on the statements in terms of gross revenue to drive the materiality.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had was, under the adjustments and differences, there's the uncorrected differences. There's a comment there made about to record investments at cost rather than fair value. Can you just explain that a little bit about what we're doing versus and what your opinion is and why that difference?
Sure, yeah. So that adjustment there has historically been left unadjusted. So last year you would have had the same sort of difference. So what that relates to is that the investment portfolio that you have is held with the MFA, and they're reporting to you, they report your investment value at fair market value, but the accounting standards that you follow for your investments and for financial instruments is that you record those types of investments at cost. So that's really the difference to back the fair market value back down to cost, because that would be reporting in accordance with your policy that you've set. That being said, in a couple years' time, the financial instruments standards will be adopted by the district, a new set of standards for financial instruments under which you will most likely be recording those investments at fair market value. So.
Okay, thank you. And just so I'm clear, where are those, when you say they're reported there, where are those reported? Are you talking about specifically in the annual report, like the financial year-end report? Is that what you're talking when you say reported?
The investments in your financial statements are the second line, right below cash. So
No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. That's what you're talking about as reported within the financial statements. That is
yes,
yes.
Okay, this is fair market value in the financial statements.
Okay.
But your policy is to record these types of investments at cost. So,
but
because the adjustment is minor, it's just left uncorrected.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The motions we're looking for now is with respect, firstly, about Appendix A, which are the financial statements that they be approved.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Go ahead. And then we have one after that, and receiving the report for information, but we'll take them one at a time. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Murdoch.
And this may be more of a question for staff than for the auditors. There was a couple of things that caught my eye here. One, under general government, that number goes up and down quite a lot in the financial statement portion of this, where under expenses general government, if I look at the last few years, it's gone from 4.7 to 4.1 to 4.8 million. I'm just curious what gets captured into the general government that would have it fluctuate like that. And later on, there's the salaries on page 26 of the financial report that went from 1.6 to 2.7 million. That's what's on page 27, is in 26 and 27. Why those changes are in there? I'm assuming that incorporates some of the consulting and so forth that happened.
Through your worship, that's correct. On a year-to-year basis, you don't always see consistency in terms of the numbers. It depends on what projects we're working on, for example, and where they lie within the financial statements. So that would explain some of the fluctuation. You'll also be aware that under the general government includes the information for our collective bargaining that we're currently working on.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to call the question. That is to approve the the financial statements for 2017. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. The next motion should be to receive Appendix B, the audit findings report for 2017.
Move approval.
Second.
Receipt.
Moved receipt. Yeah, moved receipt for information. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Thank you very much. We appreciate the information and the work you do on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 9. Mr. Herman now, I think, has got the cadence of our meetings, because I noticed he just arrived a few minutes ago, perfectly timed for his item. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Mr. Herman. This has to do with the Energy Loop contract award. You may recall not terribly long time ago, we received a notice that we were going to receive $668,069 from the Federal Gas Strategic Priorities Program. And then we're going to take that money and we're going to turn it into an award of a contract. But we see, Mr. Herman, that there were some other items that weren't included. You were recommending that we spend a total of $739,515, which would require us to put $76,000 additional funding from reserves to cover that, so they wouldn't be taxable. We wouldn't see them affect taxes this year. Is that all correct? Although the auditor is gone now, so she won't be looking over my shoulder on that issue. But go ahead, Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that is correct. It will be coming from reserves. A few years ago, we set aside some funds to do similar type projects, and with this energy loop, those particular projects aren't necessarily required. It's all incorporated, so those funds are going to its intended purpose anyways.
Okay. So let's see. Is there any questions for Mr. Herman? Okay. In that case, you should step to the mic. So it's not for Mr. Herman, it's for other staff. Okay, go ahead. Councillor Murdoch, please.
Thank you. And I guess my question just comes down to what reserves we're pulling this out of. And specifically because we have a number of years ago, we started to set aside money into a carbon tax fund to allow us to pay for some of these. And one of the criteria of that is it couldn't, under that carbon tax funding guidelines was that the projects have to be things that we wouldn't necessarily make our money back from. And wouldn't be done otherwise. And I'm just wondering, that's made it a bit difficult to spend that money. We've accomplished probably $250,000 or more in that fund. Is this something that we could use that funding for, some of that funding that is often quite difficult to spend on this project?
Through Your Worship, we could, although it makes more sense because we had already set these funds aside. It's for the same project, essentially. So if we allocated from the Green Fund, I'll call it, that's certainly an option, and then Council could redirect the other funds that had been set aside for the energy, previous year's energy projects. So that would be at Council's discretion. I also did contact UBCM, I think it was UBCM, about the Green Fund and what kind of restrictions we had around contributing or spending from that fund. And there really aren't a lot of restrictions in place for us any longer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braithwaite, you have some questions too, or just going to?
No, I was going to move the recommendations.
Good. And that is
Second.
to make this expended award of $739,515, and then to take the reserve monies to balance that out. Thank you very much. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Herman. So the next thing I think you have to add to your kind of sense of us is whether or not we're going to have any questions. You may not have to come at all. But we're glad you're here just in case. Thank you very much. Item number 10, please, Council Strategic Priorities. This is our quarterly report, and the recommendation is we receive it for information. Is there any questions on it? Okay.
Move receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. The next is the Heritage Commission minutes from March 13th.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. And now Heritage Alteration Permit for 638/644 Beach Drive. As the applicant here. I don't see the applicant. This is something we looked at. There was the subdivision there. Let me just pull that up for a minute. The Heritage application.
I move the staff recommendation to approve the proposal to allow renovations at the Heritage Home at 638-644 Beach Drive.
Thank you very
Second.
much. And these were ones that we looked at the time. Is that correct, Ms. Jensen? Am I right in thinking that?
That
They
is
were
correct.
discussed.
Yeah, the content that's in the Heritage Alteration Permit is reflected through that Heritage Revitalization Agreement.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it's moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. The next item is number 13. This is verbal reports and new business. Is there any new business? No new business? Oh, you have new business? Councillor Murdoch, please.
Well, I guess I sort of wanted to bring this forward because I thought we were going to talk about it today. Was the speculation tax, and I'm thinking maybe would be helpful if we gave some guidance if this is going to AVICC or something along that nature to bring it forward. I was so I don't know if the broader group of councillors doesn't want us to talk about this today, then that's fine. But if people are amenable, I think it's worth having a chat too.
So what I'm going to suggest is one of two things. Council is not always the best place. Council meetings are not always the best times to chat because it's a little more formal. We could move that as an issue to committee of the whole and have that kind of discussion. We can invite people to come speak with us at that same time too, and have that interaction. If there's a specific motion that you want, you can kind of give us notice and stuff. So those are two alternatives. I mean, we could have I'm not adverse to having a chat tonight, but there's probably some materials that we may want to gather. So I don't know what's council's sense of either wanting it tonight or committee of the whole or wanting a notice of motion. Those are some options. Councillor Croft, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's only fair to give the public some notice that we're going to be discussing this, and we could have a public conversation rather than council going forward with direction to Councillor Braithwaite, and we do have some time to do that before the meeting in June.
Yep. So what do you think of that, Councillor Murdoch? We can put it to committee of the whole. It'll be on the committee of the whole as an item for discussion. We can invite comments from the public. We can have that robust, and then we could kind of work on anyone who wants to bring forward a motion at that point. Then will then come back and be debated at council the following Monday. Is that a good approach?
In my opinion, Mayor, I think that the better approach would probably be to make a notice of motion and have it talked about here. And normally I think going to committee of the whole for a more robust discussion makes sense. This is, in fact, out of our jurisdiction, so the most we can do in this case is write a letter to the province expressing an opinion. And I think, my motions, when I was looking at this issue, were not super prescriptive. They were sort of essentially asking the province to, well, I guess I'll just make the motion since it seems to be, I'm fine with deferring it so people have a chance to take it.
But let me just stop you there. So the notice of motion you would bring it tonight, and we'll have debated at the next council meeting. Procedurally, Mr. Jones, is that the proper step?
Your Worship, that is absolutely a step you could take if you like. Yep.
Yep. I think so. If you give us notice tonight, then we'll come back and we'll discuss it at the subsequent council meeting. Will be the first one in May, May the 8th. Okay. Or you could also between now and then circulate it so it's in writing and it can actually form part of the agenda. Then the public will have notice of that. They could come in the participation period and make their views known.
Your Worship, normally, yes, there would be something that we would be able to take, so we would have the wording of the motion, and we would put that on the next agenda.
So, I mean, you could give us notice now, or you could kind of put it together and then put it on the agenda. Then everyone will have notice. Is that good?
I'm ready now. I'll just make the notice of motion. I'll bring it forward to a future committee meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's no motion, I guess, required here. It's just notice of motion.
Yep.
And I think I would also make a notice of motion then just around bringing forward something similar on the employer health tax for conversation here as well.
Yep. You can do that at the same time, and they can both be on the agenda for May the 8th, so that would be good.
And in fact, maybe I'll just make us third because it may take some time, but I don't know when it's going to be done jointly with a couple of other councils, and that's the notice of motion for UBCM around council term lengths. Okay. That will be coming. I'm not sure exactly when, but that would save me having to make another notice of that.
Okay, so they can all be typed up and given to Mr. Jones and then placed on May 8th for discussion and debate.
I believe just at this point, I don't think the UBCM motion will probably be ready at that point, but the other two should be. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The new business, or do you want to comment on this procedure?
I was just going to comment on the procedure because Councillor Murdoch mentioned that the least we could do or the most we could do would be to have a discussion at this table and write a letter to the province. But in fact, that's, I think quite the opposite. We can advocate through UBCM, which you just mentioned, for the other thing. So I think that's a more effective method than us writing an individual letter to the province at this point. I think that notice of motion and a debate here at this table will be not as loud a message as if it were to go through UBCM. So if you were to have something, have a strong opinion about either of those issues, I would encourage you to write a notice of motion that would include something that could go to UBCM, rather than just having it at this table and sending our individual letter.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll come back to all of that on May the 8th. Mr. Jones.
Your Worship, yeah, I just want to make sure as staff we know exactly what just happened there. So we are expecting that there will be from Councillor Murdoch 2 motions, one in relation to the speculation tax, the other in relation to the employer health tax, and the meeting is actually on May 14th, not May 8th.
Thank you. Good. No other new business? Okay. Report of the Capital Regional District. The issue of centralized fire dispatches returning to the agenda of the Protective Services and Planning Committee on Wednesday, when staff will be bringing back some comparative figures. The 5 communities who have voiced their desire to take dispatch to Surrey continue to have that view, that they will do that. Their contracts expire over the summer, and unless there's an agreement that they extend, then they will, the agreement has to be between the 5 and Saanich, who's the other party of that agreement. Then we'll see the 5 of them go to Surrey and be dispatched from there, which is rather unfortunate for a variety of reasons, which I won't get into at this point. So that's going to be an issue that'll be debated at the committee on Wednesday, and then it'll come back in the May meeting, whenever the first meeting is in the CRD in May. It's on the website somewhere and in my calendar, some electronic calendar. So other verbal reports, please. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Croft, please.
Yeah, I'd like to report on my Uvic Liaison session last week. As you know, Uvic is planning some additional student housing, a total of 800 new units. They're intending to remove 170 existing units and rebuild on that same site. The project will be about as tall as the climbing tower. It's currently proposed to be at the same height as the climbing tower at Carsa. It's probably about 2 years away by the time the project is done, and they're going to work on interim accommodation for those 170 units during that time. The other thing that was quite a big topic of conversation was the marijuana legalization that's coming up, and smoking bylaws. One of the problems they have at Uvic is they actually have smoking spaces that are set aside, and the issue is that the people who smoke cigarettes don't want to smoke with people who vape, but who are going to be smoking marijuana. So they're having a real conversation around how do you separate the smoking when you're still supposed to allow people to smoke. So that's and I think we'd be able to learn from them as to how they're going to separate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Chair.
Under other verbal reports, please.
Yeah, just a reminder, May 3rd at the Oak Creek Beach Hotel, we'll be celebrating 10 outstanding youth who live or go to school in Oak Bay at the Yes Awards. We had a huge amount of nominations this year, so it was very hard to choose just 10 of them, but we managed to, and I would like to thank all of Council who have said that I think we'll have every single person from Council at the awards, so that'll be really lovely. So I look forward to seeing you on May 3rd.
Thank you. Other verbal reports, Councillor Kirby, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure to thank the Public Art Advisory Committee for organizing the Nose Goes on Friday, which turned out to be the ideal day because it was also our chance to say farewell to Crumsby's, the beloved cupcake cafe in Estevan Village, as she moves on to other things. And but also it was wonderful because it was a Pro-D day, so the kids were like very motivated to get there and have their last bit of cupcakes. It was an excellent event, and just super exciting to see the new sculptures rolling out. There's 12 new sculptures. We're keeping Alarian Gallant's I can't remember the name of it right now, but the one that's out on Beach Drive close to the yacht club for a little while longer. But the 12 new ones are being installed as we speak, and so you may have seen them already. The flower in front of Pure Vanilla Cafe that can spin, so it's very cool. There's lots of movement in a lot of the new pieces, and we'll have a new location down on the waterfront, right beside, on Willows Beach, right beside the playground. So by the washrooms at the beach. So just off the point where the turnaround is for the cars, there's a rock outcropping there that will have a really interesting piece. And but otherwise, I think we're using all the similar spots. So you may have seen them already, but it's very exciting. Additionally, I wanted to mention that I'm meeting with our new liaison to Oak Bay from the school district. So the school district has appointed representatives to each jurisdiction to formally have a liaison relationship with the municipalities and First Nations in the region. So Peg Orchiton is the trustee that's in charge of Oak Bay. So I'll be meeting with her next Monday to particularly speak about the school crossing guard program that is still not had any kind of resolution. And obviously any plans to move forward on mental health and addiction discussions, because I think that the school district is obviously a major player in that conversation. I also wanted to thank the fire and police chiefs for recognizing the crossing guard, Margaret. I don't know that anybody even knows her last name, but everybody knows who Margaret is. And there was a really lovely thing circulating on Friday for her birthday on social media, and it spread like wildfire, and I thought that was such a wonderful thing to happen, especially on a very difficult day. So that was really lovely, and I wanted to thank them for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Murdoch, please. New business.
Thank you.
Or other verbal reports.
Verbal reports, yeah, just a quick couple. I always like doing one update on the library. So one thing that's new is there's the climate action kits that you may or may not be aware were available, but they allow one to go and do some assessments of thermal loss in houses and water flow in showers and other things. So you can check them out and help do some assessment of your house. They've been updated with help from the CRD, and those are available now through your local library. And the other update I should just give is on the Heritage Conservation Area Working Group, mostly just to acknowledge them. So right now we're 2 hours a week meeting, going through all the different bits and pieces. Have a few more weeks of that to sort of go through the design guidelines. And it'll also be circulating back to staff to get some feedback in terms of process and what we can and can't do as a group. But that's just going on. There's a lot of work to do still. But I just want to acknowledge the 10 members of that working group and Mr. Jones, and the consultants are all really working overtime and a half here trying to get through that in a timely fashion. So I just want to take that time to acknowledge it. So thank you, Mr. Jones, and everybody else who's working so hard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was item number 13. We move on to item number 14, development permit, and that's at 1605 York Place. We have a resolution notice in front of us, as well as a April 9th report from Ms. Jensen, Acting Director of Building and Planning. This has to do with a rezoning application to facilitate a two-lot single residential subdivision at that address. We did adopt a bylaw to allow the project at our December the 11th meeting, and the home that's on Lot B, I believe, is now submitted for our consideration, and a development permit with respect to form and character. And it's called an infill residential development permit area. Thank you.
move that Director of Building and Planning be authorized to issue development permit 18 with respect to 1605 York Place.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Is the applicant here, by the way? Okay, there you go. Thanks. Where you go. All the best. But there is a bylaw that you can't be constructing after 7 o'clock at night, so sorry. I don't want you to, no hammering and drilling and all that stuff and sawing until tomorrow. All right, thank you very much. We move on to 15 and 16. This is really part of the work that we saw in the minutes of our estimates committee. In April, we had 3, some of them longer than others, 3 committee meetings where we worked through the plan. So I just have a few comments as we consider this financial plan for the 2018 to 2022. And I think we all recognize that these are challenging times for local governments right across Canada, not only in British Columbia, but throughout our country. We also recognize that there may be challenging times for many of it in our community, from an economic point of view. And unfortunately, these challenges, economic challenges, can be compounded by senior levels of government downloading, where the federal and the provincial government download or pass on their responsibilities to us, to the local governments. Derelict boats is an example. And the dwindling amounts that we're supposed to be receiving from the University of Victoria, where we provide service to a form of downloading. And of course, we see on the horizon the legalization of cannabis, which may bring with it other costs and expenses. So that's a form of downloading which exacerbates these challenges. It's interesting to note that in Canada, though there's a lot of talk about local governments and taxes, that only 8% of the taxes people pay go to local governments. And while that's a small number, we take our authority to tax very seriously. And we are committed to, thoughtfully and carefully investing money we collect from our taxpayers to provide reliable, effective, and efficient local services. But like many other communities, we do have a significant infrastructure challenge. We have a contract challenge, wages and the like. And over the past year, as many of you know, we have undertaken as a council considerable work to understand what the problem is with our infrastructure, including roads, underground pipes for sewers, water, drainage, you name it, facilities, buildings. And we now have that information, and we've shared it with the community, and we're committed to responding to those challenges that we've identified. And what is quite clear is that we need to spend more money on infrastructure so we can continue to have that high quality of life that people in Oak Bay have come to expect. And for that matter, if it's not for ourselves, we owe it to our children, to our grandchildren, and to those future residents who will be moving into Oak Bay. And we owe it to them to take on a more aggressive response to the infrastructure needs. Now, this isn't easy, but it is, as we've all come to conclude, the right thing to do. But it does mean higher taxes and greater emphasis on attracting provincial and federal grants. And in this area, very appreciative of what staff has done over the last couple of years. In fact, over the last 2 years, we have received, I believe it's almost $3 million in grant funding to help with things like the Henderson Water Main, Upland's Sewer Design Project, and of course we saw tonight the energy loop to the tune of $668,000. Now that $3 million, I understand, represents the equivalent of 13% taxes in our community. So that is a very significant amount of money over the 2 years. As we see in the budget in this year, we will continue to to work on our plans, to bridge that funding gap between what we need to spend on infrastructure and to ensure we're maintaining and replacing our infrastructure in a coordinated and professional manner. And we, of course, will continue to engage the community in those ways. And we'll continue to look for funds, for grant funds through a variety of programs. So the focus on this 2018 to 2022 financial plan is to maintain and to care for what we have here today, and at the same time is looking to the future to ensure we're prepared our infrastructure needs, and at the same time continuing to engage our community on important planning. At the same time, we have to have these planning initiatives. One was just mentioned by Councillor Murdoch, the Prospect Neighborhood Heritage Conservation Area. We know the secondary suites regulation is coming up. We know there's big issues. I know Mr. Herman has taken off, but there's the Carnarvon Park planning process, which again we're investing in to renew that park and to regenerate it. So we've made these financial commitments. In addition, we've made financial commitments in our urban forest strategy, and of course is embedded in this plan is to have the bike lanes on Cadboro Bay Road. Not quite the ones that were suggested by the Willows School, but that's a start. The ones that are currently in the budget, and as we engage with the students, I think they too realize that you need to have another step is the planning, and then the third step is the funding. But this 2018 budget does take an important first step to deal with the infrastructure challenges. So the budget includes a 1% tax increase for infrastructure renewal, a 0.7% increase on road rehabilitation, and this means about $400,000 more is going to infrastructure renewal in this year, and certainly staff I know will continue their efforts to leverage a variety of grants and funding opportunities from senior government. So it is important that we maintain as we go forward these commitments and grow the commitments as we've started this year. So we know that one of the many and unique features of Oak Bay is that we're predominantly residential communities. So from a land use perspective, we're essentially, I think people would call it built out. We don't have the green spaces. There's no new land which to grow. It's mostly redeveloping land. And for most residents, having an established built-out neighborhood is a very positive thing. And in fact, I think we heard from Mr. Piercy, that's one of the reasons he moved here, is it's an established neighborhood. People love the walkability, the livability in our community. And we may recall we were voted the third best community about a year ago in Canada. So it's simply a fact of where we are in the community. We don't have this green face. We need to understand that, and especially at budget time, because our tax base is set. And it really has been stable over the past 20 years. And our growth, I think, as I think is noted on other times at council here, has been very small. Over the last, between 2011 and 2016, I think our population grew by 0.4. When the communities that had the land were, such as Victoria, were growing by leaps and bounds beyond that. And why that's important is because many of those communities that are seeing that growth can rely on that to offset any tax increases. So they put in new shopping centers, new high rises. Their taxes increase, but they're not passed on to the residential component because of these new developments. But this isn't the case here. We've had little marginal bump ups when we got the hotel, as I can recall. There was an increase which offset what otherwise would have been tax increases, but that's not the norm here. So we can't attract Costco and have all of a sudden a great new tax base. It's just not on. because we don't have that. So this means that now and into the future, our taxes will be borne largely by the people who are here now. So that's something to consider. So in response to this, it's important that we remain efficient and try to attract, as I mentioned before, the grant funding when it becomes available. And that kind of goes up and down with the vicissitudes of the federal government and election cycles there, provincial government and their election cycles. And but we can't stand still. We have to continue to move forward with our tax structure, our commitment, and continue to look for grants. So this year, this budget that we're about to look at represents 4.65% tax increase on the average homeowner. The average homeowner. That means a value, someone who has a property that's been assessed at $1.333 million. That's the average assessed value in our community. It's hard to believe. I know when I bought my house 20 years ago, I paid an outrageous sum of $270,000. I thought I'd never be able to recoup that back. But now it's an average assessed value. We're in that certainly group. So that means on an average house that people will be paying per month an extra $13.20 per month in taxes. So if your property is assessed higher than the average, you'll be paying more per month. And if you're below the assessed value, you'll be paying less than that $13.20 a month extra. So, but it also is important to see that the tax bill also represents increases in the school district, Capital Regional District, Greater Public Library, which we've heard from is expanding and doing very well. We've heard that from Councillor Murdoch. And of course, BC Transit. These are separate agencies and taxing authorities, and we collect the money and we pass it back to them. So on a micro scale, the district's budget may seem complicated, but the increase in the budget is rather straightforward to explain. As I previously mentioned, 4.65%. If you break that down, there's really four areas that contribute to that. The first is police, fire, and municipal contracts. I'd mentioned that earlier, challenges of contractual, 2.55. Infrastructure renewal reserve that I'd mentioned, that's a 1% lift. Additional pavement rehabilitation, that's a 0.7% lift. And then the Greater Victoria Public Library, that's a 0.5%, 0.5%. So all that accumulated gets us to the 4.65. So I want to thank Council for the work that we did, and during those estimate meetings. And I certainly want to give particular thanks and recognition to our staff, particularly Ms. Carter, who was kind of having the acting CAO hat and the Chief Financial Officer, as it used to be called, role. And we really appreciate that and trying to balance that wide array of interests that we have in our community. And we do know, I think it's often said, that there's only one taxpayer. And so making all that work together, I thank my council colleagues and staff. So we do know, and this is an election year, we do know that tax increase is going to be higher than most regions. It's not an election year budget that typically you might see. So despite this, I commend Council for making a wise and it is a courageous decision through our committees to increase that infrastructure spending to ensure that we meet the longer term needs of our community. So and the people who live here. So I'd like to thank everybody, thank Council, and thank staff for that. We have been entrusted, we love this community, we've been entrusted by the residents to hold the purse strings, and we take that responsibility very seriously. And we'll certainly continue to do our very best representing the community to ensure we get value for money and that this remains the best place to live in Canada. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll move on to the consideration of the first, second, and third readings. Firstly, of Bylaw 4709.
Move first reading of 4709.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed.
Move
Now, just so we get the procedure straight,
Okay.
the second reading, and is at the point in time, I'm just going to get my notes here. I think Ms. Hopkins provided them for me. Thank you very much. That we invite, after the second reading, we invite public input, and prior to third reading, correct?
That's correct.
Great. Okay. So,
Move second reading of 4709.
Okay, seconded?
okay, now I call upon the public, anyone who wishes to come forward. We'll hear from the public, and then we'll have a discussion at council table. Okay. Oh, okay, there is someone coming forward.
Hi, everyone. Curtis Hobson, Oak Bay.
Mr. Hobson, welcome.
Thanks. So, kind of all over the board here with some of my comments, but obviously the both two sides to any budget is, and municipal included, is the revenue and the expenses. I didn't get a satisfying answer to Councillor Murdoch's question to staff about the staffing increases and how they had fluctuated. It seemed like they'd gone up quite a bit. And I don't know if that's particularly for consulting fees or what, or if it's new hires. Wondering how that happened when word around town is that we are deficient in staff, yet the salaries or the expenses for staffing has gone up. The revenue side of the equation, Ms. Richardson talked earlier about development cost charges and community amenity contributions. I would encourage council to be a little more hard-nosed in that area, including in the HRA agreements. I understand that the community does recognize a benefit when a heritage building is revitalized, but I would like to see an actuarial analysis of the cost and benefits. From my lay observations, I feel that the applicants and the proponents on the HRAs are getting a really good deal based on the zoning that they get, the rezoning. For instance, the Beach Drive recently was a 4-lot subdivision from 2 existing lots, I understand, 1 house on 2 existing lots. And I don't really know, other than permitting fees, and a revitalized heritage house, what the municipality is getting out of that. I know that the applicant is getting 3 lots to sell in a beautiful location that are going to go for many millions of dollars. And again, the community is getting a revitalized heritage house, but maybe an opening tour when it's done we might get. But I don't see the benefit to our pressing needs for infrastructure. So that's something. I really do feel the planning department should be self-funded through permits and other things. I know we're staffing deficient in that area as well. And I don't feel that, maybe not totally 100%, but I do feel a lot of the work that the planning department does should be paid for by permits and development applications. So moving on, we know that Oak Bay is a very livable community. And one of the things we love about it is its livability and tree-lined streets, but livability costs money. And I do think that we get a pretty good deal for the taxes we pay and the community we live in. I'm happy to hear about the 1% targeted tax increase for infrastructure. So I think that's, personally I think that's not enough, but it's a good first step. The citizen budget tool, I was very, very disappointed in the citizen budget tool. After making all my moves on the sliders, my taxes only went up by $61, and I couldn't move the slider any farther to the right. Might be an anomaly, but I am willing to pay much more tax for the livability and the infrastructure needs in our community. And so I felt a bit frustrated because I would pay double, triple, quadruple that amount in tax to pay for the livability of our community. And and I think that was an important thing. I mentioned that in the comments section. It was disappointing that I could only raise my taxes by $61. And again, I might be an anomaly there, but it was frustrating. And finally, my last question, people talk about, increasing the tax base, right? So you bring more people into the community, you subdivide lots, and you increase the tax base. But I would like to see some factual data or some studies. Is it really a net gain, right? Because you bring people into the community, you subdivide lots, et cetera, whatever you do to increase the population and increase the tax base, there are associated costs with that. So again, if you build a high rise, maybe, but I don't know about on a municipal level. So proponents of, we are going to fund our infrastructure replacement by increasing our tax base, I don't know if that's necessarily a net gain. And before we head down that road as a municipality, I think some evidence-based decision-making would be a good thing to have. And finally, on the revenue side, the generating revenue, and staff is to be applauded for their grants success, but we need some creative ideas around that. And I think that might be part of the citizen engagement work that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hobson. I'm just wondering from staff, Mr. Hobson, I think had a factual question about staff increases, hiring. I think that's what it was in terms of the increase of the labor load, I think it's often called. Is anyone who can answer that?
Through your worship, we have 3 different collective agreements that we are working with, and depending on when those agreements are ratified, if you will, we have to allocate costs to the various years. So I don't have that particular detailed information in front of me this evening, but I could certainly do some further analysis.
Okay. But it was the labor load that would, I think I'd mentioned at the outset, 2.65, I think it was. I'll look at my notes. That was that increase in the labor load. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to address this? All right, thank you very much. Now, discussion on second reading of Bylaw 4709. Okay. Councilor Murdoch, please.
Thank you, Chair and our Mayor. Mr. Hobson, you'll be happy to know that you are in fact paying 4 times the $61 amount. The total with taxes and water is $230 or so, plus by the time you add in regional costs and everything else, it's significantly more than that. So feel happy that your dreams are coming true.
But those are regional costs.
No, sorry. Yeah, some of those are regional costs. The things.
Talking about Oak Bay, right?
Anyway, sorry. I know. I just had a couple of questions actually to staff, if I could, based on the Appendix A, and they are twofold through you, Chair. One is just on the property taxes in the 5-year plan. That number varies a fair bit across the number, between 1.65 and about 2.8 or something percent, but the average is 2.1% increase year over year. That's net, gross tax increases across the thing. And if I go back and look at the numbers over the last, from 2008 or even 2012, in particular, we've averaged well over 5% in that time, including this year. So I guess I don't like 5-year plans that aren't realistic. And if we're making decisions, it's nice to have those decisions in the context of what those costs are going to be. So I guess I would ask the question, why are the 5-year plan at that number? And is it something that is reasonable to possibly change on that, just reflecting a bit more of historical averages?
Through your worship, so when we build the 5-year financial plan, we base it on known projects, if you will, that we know we'll be working on over that next 5 years. In this case, this plan includes all of the items that have been brought forward by the directors from their respective departments. And as you know, it is updated regularly. We do amended budgets typically at least once throughout the year. And as well, when we bring it forward next year, we'll have a much better idea of the projects that we'll be working on for future years. In the property tax line specifically, I have not added at this time any additional percentage increases for infrastructure renewal, because my understanding was that council would prefer to make those decisions annually. If council wanted that changed and added into this particular 5-year financial plan, then we could certainly do that at council's direction.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The numbers there, do they reflect then just continuity at the current state of funding for things like the pavement management system that were approved in 2017? They're just flat at that point going forward?
That's correct. I believe the pavement management we have tried to increase on a step basis.
So the 5-year plan includes some of that in there?
That's correct.
Okay, that's heartening. I think that the 2.1% is unreasonably low, and I think if we're going to, again, just making decisions, it's nice to have the numbers as accurate as possible, but I take your point that we are still working on some of those details, and we can let that happen now. The other question I have was under the expenditures, the same 5-year plan. There's a line there that says debt interest, which increases close to 100% from 2.2 million to 4.2 million over the 4 years, and the debt principal stays constant at 142,000. I'm just wondering if you would mind explaining that to us.
Through your worship, that particular line does look rather odd. I went back and checked it myself. It includes the CRD post-2006 debt portion for the sewers as well. So that's why you see such a significant number there.
Thank you very much. And I do want to just share the thanks to council that the mayor expressed. I think it's really important that we start being realistic about these numbers. Last year we had an increase on the audited statements there of 2.79%, which was accomplished by not putting money in and taking money out of reserves and doing all kinds of things to kind of keep the number down. And I think it's really important for us, this number, to reflect the cost that we have. And I also share the mayor's comments that it's not enough, and we have to do a very good job of structurally being very, very strategic. And even in things like, even bike lanes that we want to have, I think we really are going to have to bite the bullet and say they're going to get built when we have grants, because that $75,000 here and there adds up very quickly, because we're paying an interest payment on that by not tackling other infrastructure pieces. So that's all I have to say on this. I certainly appreciate the hard work that everybody put into this to get to a budget that I can support this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Third reading, please.
Move third reading.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Thank you very much. And the consequential, I suppose we can call it that, bylaw that relates to the bylaw 4711, the Boulevard Frontage Tax Amendment bylaw.
Move first reading of bylaw 4711.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Second reading, please.
Move second reading bylaw 4711.
Seconded.
Discussion? Seeing none, call a question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. And third reading, please.
Move third reading bylaw 4711.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I want to thank everyone for coming. Thanks a lot. And I really want to reiterate my thanks, particularly to Ms. Carter, throughout this budgeting process. I know with those two hats and running between offices that you did a real incredible job for us. So thanks a lot. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thanks a lot.